Being authentically you. The most expensive thing I ever did was stop being myself. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Money Mindset with Gull Khan. I'm your host, Gull Khan, and today we're talking about something that has absolutely nothing to do with money, but absolutely everything to do with wealth. Because the wealthiest version of you is not the version that gets the biggest, that has the biggest bank account, nor the version that has the fancy car, nor the version that has the perfect Instagram feed where every photo looks like it belongs in the Vogue magazine. The wealthiest version of you is the version that no longer needs permission to be themselves, the version that stops performing, the version that stops apologizing for existing, the version of you that finally becomes authentically you. So before you roll your eyes and say, oh, wonderful, another self-development podcast telling me about self-love, just stay with me. Because today I'm going to tell you a story. Actually, I'm going to tell you my story. Now, if you've listened to me for any length of time, you would know that my life is less Disney princess and more of a Netflix drama series with 6 seasons, multiple plot twists, and three occasions where the audience shouts, no, surely this can't get any worse. And somehow it does. Now, honestly, if somebody wrote my life as a novel, the most publishers would reject it because they would say, this is unrealistic. Nobody can go through this much. And yet, here we are. I'm still standing, still smiling, still making dua, still paying HMRC. We can't get away from HMRC, can we? And frankly, all of this is proof that miracles do exist. So, the day I realized I had become someone else, I think most of us lose ourselves long before we realize something's gone missing. Nobody wakes up and thinks one morning, yes, I'm going to be someone else. Today, I'd like to completely abandon my personality and become a watered down version of myself. Nobody does that. It happens slowly. It happens one compromise at a time. It happens one relationship at a time. One desires to be loved at a time. I used to love singing. I used to love dancing. I was not about to become the next global superstar. Nobody was going to, no record label was going to sign me secretly, you know? There's nobody waiting outside my house secretly waiting to sign me up. But I loved singing. I loved dancing too. I put music on and danced around my house. I was playful. I was joyful, expressive. And I'm going to share a story with you here. I love dancing to such an extent that when I was growing up, so for those of you who know about my previous history, I grew up on a council estate. We didn't have much. I grew up in extreme poverty. And add to that, my brother caused a lot of grief for my mum. So I was the child who just studied. That's it, right? And I really studied hard. And so I had a creative outlet. There was nothing else for me to do. I didn't go outside, I didn't go out play with friends as much. I just stayed indoors most of the time. So when I wasn't studying, I was watching Bollywood movies and I was dancing, right? So it was either watching Bollywood movies, so I grew up in Bollywood movies, right? And I was dancing. And if you know, you know, right? The mere haathon mein naada churiyan hain. And obviously the Madhuri came on, 18 baras ki kawani. Kali thi right? You know the Bollywood, songs for Sri Devi and to Madhuri. Yeah, right? Ek, do, teen, right? I did that. So that was my creative outlet. I would dance and let my hair down, obviously not on stage, in my living room. And that's how I would express myself. And that's the only enjoyment I had. So if I wasn't studying and if I wasn't watching a Bollywood movie, I was dancing. That's it. My mother, by the way, just a bit thing. My mother hated me dancing, absolutely hated me dancing. But she let me do it to the point because I was so obsessed with, singing and dancing and that creative side, because that's the only thing I had, was that I would fall ill. And the way to get me better would be to make me dance. So I remember my mother, when I was, younger, she used to think, oh, tu nachti rehni hai, tu nachti rehni hai, tu marasan hai, that kind of rubbish. And marasan, by the way, means you're a well, it's actually a derogative term in our language, but but it actually just means a performer, really. But it's used in derogative way in our language, in Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi kind of thing. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, uh, but she saw my passion for it to the point where she would tell me if I remember this one particular time I had this really high temperature and I wasn't getting any better and my mother actually told me ਤੂੰ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਨੱਚ ਲੈ ਨਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਤੂੰ music ਲਾ ਤੂੰ ਨਾ ਤੂੰ ਗਾਣਾ ਲਾ ਲੈ ਸਿਰੀ ਦੇਵੀ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਨੱਚ ਲੈ right so by the way she speaks Punjabi so obviously that's what she said ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਤੂੰ ਨਾਚ ਲਓ ਨਾ ਚੰਦਾ so that's what I did. I'm not joking. That's what I did. I put my music on. I put my Sri Devi song on. I don't remember which song it was, but it was probably, Ek Do Teen or that was Madhuri's actually, or one of the Sri Devi songs, right? And I would dance, and I would dance my heart out, right? That's how passionately I love dancing. I studying Kathak as well. And when I started learning classical, which is classical Indian dancing, my brother had a problem with that. He couldn't understand why I would want to put on ghungru and learn Kathak. Kathak is such a beautiful, beautiful dance form, belongs to northern India. But my brother had a big issue with ghungru because that's associated with the wife, with the prostitutes, I suppose. So it was a big, big thing for my brother. And because of that, that's one of my first compromises. I gave up Kathak. So I was actually very good at it, Kathak. The hand movements and the eye gestures and stuff. But I gave that up because my brother didn't want me to learn Kathak. I wasn't going to perform on stage. I wasn't going to do this as a profession. It was just my way of expressing my creative side. But my brother had an issue with it. And keep in mind, my brother does joyriding and doing all sorts of stuff, but he had an issue with me learning classical Indian dancing. So I stopped. There was a big hoo-ha home. My mother didn't have an issue, my brother did. And just to keep peace at home, I compromised and I gave up Kathak. I didn't do Kathak thereafter. But I still kept on doing the Bollywood dancing and I'll still dance at home. That was okay. My normal dancing would be at weddings and stuff, right? Just in the house. And I was known for it. So I was known for in my younger years, oh, Chanda bahut acha nachti hai, right? Chanda bahut acha nachti hai, Chanda nachti hai, Chanda gati hai. I was known to be the one who's singing and dancing and everything because that's all I ever did, right? I was that kind of girl. And then a relationship happened, and this individual did not like me dancing or singing. So guess what? I stopped. I stopped dancing. And I look back in that time frame and think, oh my God, oh my God, I was never going to be performing on stage. Nobody was going to sing, sign me up and make me a singer. Nothing of the sort. Gungunati mein abhi hoon, right? I do, sing still. But it was the dancing part that I stopped and I never resumed. I mean, even maybe every now and again, maybe, once in every 10, 15 years, and maybe on a wedding, I may get up and do a dance number, but not properly. Like, not the way I was. I would dance in my house 2, 3 hours continuously on the go. That was my break. That was way for me to unwind myself. That's how I did it. And this is why I was very, very good. I was self-taught. Nobody learned. I didn't learn it from anybody. I learned from watching movies at the time, Siri Devis and so Uski Adain, Madhuri ki Adain. So that's what I learned. But guess what? It stopped. Another compromise. So first compromise on Kathak was my brother, and then this other significant relationship caused me to stop dancing. Right? And that's painful when I look back in my life and think what dancing actually meant to me. I was never going to perform on stage, but what it meant to me, and I gave it up, stopped, halas, just cold turkey. That's quite painful to remember. I was playful, I was joyful, I was expressive. When I was dancing, I was all of those things. I wasn't worried about what people thought. But this relationship where I got into, these things weren't valued. Now, I want to be clear. Nobody said, "Go, please stop being yourself." Nobody said to me, that just stop. It wasn't like that. I just stopped. A little less singing. I stopped dancing altogether. A little less joy and a little less me. And that's the scary thing. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself in installments. And then I got married. Oh God. And here's the confession. I couldn't cook, right? So when I went off to Leiden University as part of my degree, I couldn't even boil pasta. Honestly, my specialty was reading takeaway menus. That was the extent of my culinary expertise. Yet somehow I convinced myself that being a good wife meant becoming somebody completely different. So I learned. Suddenly I made biryani, and then I learned to make nihari, and then I learned to make butter chicken. Oh my Lord. Every dish under the sun I made. I mean, the dishes that took 6 hours to make and then 10 minutes to eat. My Lord. But whilst there's nothing going wrong with these learning these new skills, the dangerous part was the belief underneath it. I started believing that being loved required me to become someone else. I thought acceptance meant changing. I thought love meant shrinking. I thought belonging meant fitting into somebody else's idea of who I should be. So I became smaller. I became quieter. I became more agreeable, more submissive, less ambitious, less visible, less expressive, less me. I even tried to act less intelligent. Can we just pause and appreciate how ridiculous that is? Imagine spending years building your mind, studying, learning, growing, then pretending not knowing how things are or so the other people feel comfortable. Yet women do this all the time. We know the answer in the meeting, but we stay quiet. We have the idea, but we don't share it. We apologize before speaking. We downplay our achievements. I did that all the time when I was married. We shrink ourselves to other people's ideas of us and so that they can feel bigger. And the worst part, people often don't even ask us to do it. We just do it ourselves. No one asked me to do this. I just did it. I became so good at playing small that eventually I forgot how big I was. I lost confidence, not just in my abilities, but in my appearance too. I stopped being the woman who was just there. I focused on flaws. I questioned my beauty. I questioned my intelligence. I questioned my instincts. I questioned everything. And now people look at me and think, Gull's so confident. And people just think, oh, Gull's always been confident. She's just very confident. But the answer is actually a lot different. No, 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 no. Confidence isn't something that I always had. Confidence is something I rebuilt brick by brick. After life had knocked me down so many times. And one day I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't happy because other people were rejecting me. I was unhappy because I had rejected myself. I was rejecting me. I had abandoned the things that made me who I was. The singing, the dancing, the laughter, the ambition, the opinions, the intelligence, the dreams, the weirdness, the quackiness. I am weird. I'm, spontaneous. I love to laugh. I have funny laughter. I love to dance. I have hand movements, right? Probably comes from Kathak. So, I have those hand gestures, the energy, I'm me. The whole beautiful package that makes me me. And here's what I know now. People who genuinely love you don't ask you to become less. They create space for you to become more joyful, more alive, more expressive, more confident, more authentic. The right people don't dim your light. They hand you a bigger lamp. And finally, when I started becoming myself again, something incredible happened. Not everyone liked it, but I liked it. And that's the beginning of freedom. Now, next topic. The business lesson that nobody talks about. That lesson followed me in every area of my life. including business. A few years ago, you guys know, about 2.5 years ago, I bought a manufacturing business. Now, for those of you who know me as a money mindset coach, author, podcaster, and healer, this probably sounds completely insane. And it was. It was a manufacturing company, a tube bending company, right? Industrial fabrication, welding. Really? Seriously, Go? Yes. So when I first walked into the factory, half the people were probably looking at me thinking, what on earth is she doing here? To be fair, some days I was asking myself the exact same question. What the hell am I doing here? I walked into a complete new industry. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the customers. I didn't know the suppliers. I didn't know the politics. I had people betray me, people leave, people disappoint me, people make promises and they never intended to keep. I lost money. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. Oh, that was a big one. Trusted so many people that were wrong. And there were moments when I wondered whether I had completely and utterly lost my mind. But something beautiful happened. The business stripped away every mask I had. I could no longer pretend to know everything. I didn't. I could no longer hide behind expertise. I had to show up exactly as I was, which is tough, which is tough. I had to show up learning, growing, failing, and most importantly, trying again. Authenticity isn't pretending you're perfect. Authenticity is being willing to be seen while you're still figuring things out. Why we wear masks? The truth is, most people are performers. We perform for our families, we perform for our partners, we perform for social media, we perform for our colleagues, we perform for strangers we've never met. We perform so much that eventually we forget the where the performance ends and where life actually begins. And every mask costs energy. Every role costs energy. Every act costs energy. And eventually the bill does arrive. It does arrive. For some people, it arrives as burnout. For others, it's depression. For others, it's anxiety. And for others, it's actually physical illness, right? Maybe you're not exhausted because life is hard. Maybe you're exhausted because you're trying to be somebody you're not. One of the most beautiful concepts in Islam is ikhlas, sincerity, doing things for Allah, not for applause, not for validation, not for approval, not for recognition, and not for even appreciation. It's really freeing when you think about it. Imagine no longer making decisions based on what will people think. Imagine making decisions based on what is right, what honors Allah, what aligns with my values. Most of our suffering comes from managing other people's opinions and expectations of us. And here's the truth. People judge you anyway. If you're quiet, they judge you. If you're loud, they judge you. If you're successful, they judge you. If you fail, they judge you. So you might as well be yourself because they'll judge you anyway. But at least you're living your life on your own terms, based on what you want to be with your life, right? Live life on your own terms. Success doesn't fix identity problems. Here's something I learned the hard way. Money doesn't fix identity problems. Success doesn't fix identity problems. Followers don't fix identity problems. Awards don't fix identity problems. You can build a 7-figure business and still not know who you are. You can have the perfect life on paper and still feel empty. Because success amplifies who you already are. It doesn't replace who you are. I met three people who are miserable. I met people with very little who radiate peace. The difference isn't money. The difference is alignment. One person living the truth, one person living the performance. That's the difference. 5 questions to ask yourself. Let me leave you with 5 questions. Who am I trying to impress? What would I do if nobody judged me? Where am I shrinking to make other people comfortable? What truth am I afraid to admit? Who am I becoming when nobody's watching? Sit with those questions, journal them, pray on them, think deeply about them, reflect on them. Because every breakthrough starts with honesty. Final thoughts. If there's one thing I want you to remember from today's episode, the world doesn't need another copy. It needs an original version of you. The most powerful thing you can do is become yourself. Not the filtered version, not the edited version, not the socially accepted version, the real version. The version that sings, the version that dances, the version that laughs too loudly, the version that has big ideas, the version that loves deeply, the version that refuses to apologize even taking up space, the version that allows you to express yourself beautifully, to be yourself, to be the real version of you, the version that has the courage to dream big, the version of you that believes miracles are possible, the version of you that knows that through every hardship comes ease and that everything matters and you matter and your dreams matter, the version of you that wants to believe anything's possible and you can make it happen, the version of you that wants to live, not exist, that wants to breathe, that wants to smile, the version of you that just wants to be you, true, authentic you. Because your authenticity gives other people permission to be authentic too. And maybe that's the greatest gift that we can give to each other. Not perfection, not success, not wealth, truth, your absolute truth. Thank you for listening to Money Mindset with Gull Khan. If this episode resonated with you, please do share with someone you think needs to hear it. And remember, the life you're searching for may be hiding behind the mask you're afraid to remove. Until the next time, stay blessed, stay abundant, and most importantly, stay authentically you. Assalamu alaikum.